we'll just go from there and see how it goes. Yeah. So let's see. Okay, now I have it up.
Yay.
Do you like my
Life
background?
happened. I do like your background. It's very fun. I like what you've done with the place. Nice editing.
Thank you. You know what's really cool is this is really my office. It just depends on the angle of my camera and what's going on. You know, I don't want to have to worry about fixing everything. Mm-hmm. So one day I took a picture of it, and if I don't zoom in, I look like I'm about this big.
Hey, there's a bonus.
Comfy chair. Just zoom out.
That's how you do it. Use that perspective to your advantage.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
I wish my house cleaned itself this quickly. You know, you could be just like, boom, you know, snap your fingers like they do the jump cuts. And
yes, like back in the days of the TV show Bewitched, she'd just wiggle her nose
and bing.
It was all done. I wish I would love that. I don't like to clean. I don't like to cook. I don't know.
I always say to people, I like to do it the way Mary Poppins did. I want to be singing and dancing and writing down banisters.
Right. And it all just happens on its own.
And it's walking itself where it needs to be. I'm thinking that's pretty cool.
I agree. And I think, that spoonful of sugar and just makes everything amazing and
makes it all fun.
Don't know what her spoonful of sugar was back in the day. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you. I'm really excited for this conversation. I'm looking forward to hearing more of your story. I love sharing the stories of overcoming because I think so many people miss out on they're seeing all the highlight reels, right? They see all the books you've written, all the courses, all the radio broadcasts. In fact, I'm in Fort Collins, so I'm like just down the road from you. So when I first heard your name, I was like, Janine Bolon. I was like, and your voice, I was like, I know her from somewhere. And it's like radio. I was like, oh my gosh.
There we are.
I've been here since I was 12, since the 80s. So I know I've heard your voice somewhere on the radio at some point in my life. And so, and people will see that. And then they compare the struggle they're going through to where someone else has gotten to. And so my hope with these episodes is to really help people see that we're all human, right? I want people to find someone they connect with, that they align with. One of my guests could be their next step that they've been looking for, because it's not always me, right? We're all a piece of the puzzle. And I want people to hear someone at some point that they can go, oh, I'm not crazy. I'm not alone. I'm going to keep going forward.
Right.
So I really look forward to these conversations and getting to know the stories and hopefully have people be inspired on the other side.
That's what we always hope for, right? If we want to make the world a better place, one person at a time, that's how you do it.
Yes, absolutely. So when we get into this, I'll do my introduction for you. I don't read your bio. I put it in the description. Okay. I like to give my own introduction, very personalized about the person that I'm sharing this space with. And then I'll give you a space to introduce who you are, what you do, who you serve. And then we'll get into your story of overcoming that's gotten you to where you are.
Okie dokie. Sounds fabulous.
Sounds good. Awesome. I need my paper. I take notes while I'm talking.
So for those of you who are listening to the YouTube channel, just know that since 1987, I have been on radio, and you may have heard this: KDFN, KOEA-FM, serving the current River Valley with information and entertainment at the top of the hour for years. And that would be yours truly. There you go. Now back to you, Dina.
Oh my gosh, you're freaking amazing. Oh my goodness. I really need to do my media kit. Like, it's still sitting there. I haven't even looked. Like, I love it. I hear Janine's voice all the time. It's time to do your media kit. Right. Oh, you want to submit to be a guest somewhere. You need to do your media kit.
Media kit.
Oh, you're wanting to do that. Oh, you need to do, like, I hear your voice all the time. You need to do your media kit. media kit. I'm like, okay.
I'll get on that later.
I'm going to do my media kit. I'm currently working on my 30 to 60 second, like little elevator pitch.
I see.
Right?
Yes.
And I read all these bios that people send me and I listen to people's podcasts and I'm like, why can't I sound like that? Why can't I do that? Like, what is my issue? I don't know. I'm just going to work through it and say I don't have an issue.
Mm-hmm. Right?
I'm just, overthinking. I'm putting my overthinking in timeout so that I can get some things accomplished.
What we do is
the media kit.
We say, put your inner critic on a stool, a comfortable one, and give her an iPad. In your case, we'd say give her an iPad, let her entertain herself while you get busy working on doing your creative thing. Because the inner critic is wonderful when you're editing, but when you're trying to create something out of air, it takes a little bit. And so you can't have that inner critic sitting there agonizing over word usage. Just slap something down on the page, stream of consciousness, and then have the inner critic come in and readjust.
Yes, I did that last night. I was like, okay.
Oh, good for you. Look at you. See, you already got it.
And I sat down and I wrote something in like a couple of minutes. And I was like, oh, well, now I rearrange it. Oh, let me read it this way. I think it took me like 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. And I think one of my challenges is in the corporate world and growing up, you're always told hard work. And things, I naturally have this like intuitive writing and intuitive speaking kind of thing. And so when it just naturally comes out of me, I always think it's wrong. It wasn't hard. It was easy. It just happens. And so I'm working on separating that out and going, I don't have to believe hard work is all that pays off, because we are no longer in a world where you're in the fields all the time. Like, I understand my grandfather, like my grandparents, they worked really, really hard. And all the people that have come before us have worked really, really hard. And I don't have to work that hard with what I do and who I serve and how I do it. And I need to just, stop stressing out about everything being hard. And it doesn't have to be.
No, it does not. We are now in the digital age. As soon as we hit the atomic age or information age, however you want to define it for yourself, it's like, no, you don't have to make it hard. I gave up on doing things the hard way. And now I do them. They call it path of least resistance or whatever. In physics, they talk about that all the time, about the more resistance you put into a system. And all it is just we are putting the brakes on ourselves. And so it's like we're running around in our cars with the emergency brake on, and we don't know why it's causing us to lose our economy.
Yeah. Wow. So I'm excited. I'm a note taker because as you're talking, I like to write some thoughts I can ask questions later, or just because I have a whole folder of my notes from podcasts from my guests that I keep track of. Perfect. I was thinking, it'd be really fun to do compilation of here's all my thoughts from all of these things, what this person said and what this person said, and just, have some little snippets that can drive people back to those podcasts. Oh, my Lanta, bad timing. Call your father. I am doing a recording. This
is life. This is life.
This is life with adult children. I'm recording. Please call your father.
So you have that comedian that's like, I don't know. Ask your mom.
Right.
I don't know. Ask your father.
Dude, I said, text me an address so when I'm done recording this afternoon, I can just get to where I need to go. Because after this, I have another episode and then I have to leave.
Understood.
Right? And so I'm like, I don't know if, you think that when they become adults that in one ear out, the other goes away, but even I still do it. So
there we are.
We're all good. Well, let's get into this. This is so much fun. I feel like there's a lot of topics that we could definitely get into some good conversations with. Goodness. lots of time for that, I'm sure.
Well, just let's focus in on things that you're challenged by now, because what you're challenged by now is what your listeners are challenged by. You know how that works.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes. I am challenged by the one thing I've been focusing on lately is structure. A lot of people think of organization, but for me, it's structure. I have to have the structure, the framework, the outline, and it can't be somebody else's. It has to be my own. So I've taken that, and I've taken everything I've done for the last 8 years in my business, the 3 years in my previous business in accounting, and then me starting out as an entrepreneur and watching all these people when I was little. And I'm like, okay, I know what people need. And this is what they've been telling me. I need step by step. But what they really need is to create their own framework so they can have their own step by step instead of trying to do everything like everybody else. Like, take the pieces that work for you from the people that are supporting you. Like your media kit. I need to do a media kit. I don't know how to do one. Right? So how do I take what Janine has for me? I mean, that's such a small piece of what you have to offer people. But that's my starting point, right? I need a media kit. So that's where I'm going to work at. And I take that and I take all of that and I do it. And then I tweak it and make it my own for me. So it shows up with Janine's expertise and my personality.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about structure, shall we? One of the things I want to encourage every entrepreneur out there is realize how courageous you are. You have done something freaking amazing and awesome. And that is, you walked away from security and you embraced freedom as an entrepreneur. And so realize that that passion that drives you, that heart, is that courageous lion from the Wizard of Oz. And every entrepreneur understands the cowardly lion, because even though the lion can roar, even though the lion has, done amazing things, there's still that inner part of you that is like, oh my God, how am I going to make the mortgage payment? Oh my gosh, I hope we can pay the bills this week. That kind of thing. That is still there. But I want you to realize that you're doing something incredibly courageous. And what saves me, and I don't know if this will work for everybody, but I know what saves me is the fact that I have so much structure that it is my safety net. So just like a safety net, it's not a whole fabric, it's not the whole plan, but there's just enough nodes tying those strands together that should I fall, that safety net is there. And that safety net is my calendar. It's, when do I start work? When do I stop work? And the biggest thing is when I talk to entrepreneurs, I say, okay, when's your next vacation? And they look at me and they go, what are you talking about? I'm like, you left security for freedom. What is the life that you wanted for yourself? Well, I started my business. It was kind of a side hack and it just kind of grew. And, a lot of entrepreneurs are like that. And I always look at them and go, that's fabulous. So let's start building out a lifestyle around that now. And the way you do that is you build out this beautiful safety net, which is your life, the life that you want. And then you fit the business into the cracks. You fit the business in there because you don't want your business running you, which is what ends up happening to a lot of business owners. They're chasing the dollar. They're so terrified. They think they have to work harder than what they are. They think their solution to whatever problem is work harder because that's what they were trained for so very long. And in actuality, it's the more you relax and the more time you take off is your saving grace. It's the exact opposite of what we were taught. However, that's counterintuitive. And I say that kind of like jokingly counterintuitive. It's counter to what we are taught. So our intuition may be telling you to go ahead and move forward and just go take some time off and go wander around the snow-capped peaks here in Colorado, or go to the beach, or take that trip to Hawaii. Why? Because you're going to be inspired in some way that you can't be inspired when you're sitting there with your head hung over the desk wondering how you're going to make the next thing happen. That's not the answer. That puts you in a place of such distrust for yourself because you go into these negative spirals. So structure is your saving grace. It just depends on how are you going to build that structure And as I like to tell people, I say, so who is your boss? And they go, well, I'm the boss of my own company. I'm like, no, you're not. Your calendar's your boss. How do you set up your work hours? My hours of working, my feet hit the floor at 4 a.m. But I don't get to working until I'm at 9 a.m. I've worked out, I've written on my book, I've done some creative stuff, meditated, there's a whole, as you can tell, there's 5 hours of activity before I ever get to that 9 a.m. and hit the screen and get ready to go to work. And then the last appointment of the day ends at 5. Sometimes I'll go a little deeper. It depends on if I'm working on the Pacific Coast or not, but every day has its structure to it and what I'm doing. And I move forward with my goals. And that's how you're able to run 91 online courses, write 12 books, run 4 podcast programs, and coordinate a team of 15 people while being a single mom and homeschooling 4 children and all that kind of stuff. That's how you do it, is structure. You do it through the structure, but that structure is self-imposed and it's never boring. And if something isn't working, guess what? I can change it. So structure is freedom.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I got to do the intro because I can just sit and listen to you all day long and just cancel everything else I have going on. Welcome to today's episode of the Walking With You podcast. I am your host, Dina Adams, and I am here today with the incredible Janine Bolon out of Colorado. And I have to say, I haven't known Janine very long. But when I first heard her voice, I knew instantly that I had heard her somewhere because we're both in Colorado. And little did I know she was actually on the radio. Many times I've heard her voice. Janine, the few times I've gotten to meet her and be in a room with the greatness of this group of people that I'm a part of, there's always so much grace that comes out of her. And there's this passion and love and grace, and she will kindly tell you what will help you take the next step, what will help you keep moving forward from where you are, because she thinks and shows up in the world in a way very different than most people I know. And I don't know if that is because of that scientist part of her, or if it's that, she's a mom to everybody and the sister and the, let's have a great time and love life. And I'm not that way. I'm a very rigid, very, very head down. I'm not like the jokester or have fun. I don't know how to have fun. My family will tell you that. I don't know how to, if it's up to me, there is none to be had because I don't understand that. To me, fun is like organizing and color coding and all those things. My family's like, no, you want fun. You want intentionality. You want that side. Like that's Janine all the way. So Janine, thank you so much for honoring us with being here today and sharing your story.
I'm so thrilled to be here. And thank you so much for inviting me because I wouldn't be here if you didn't invite me.
You are very welcome. So first I want to get started with you just sharing who you are, what you do, and who you serve in your business.
So, as the lovely Dina had to say, what we're doing here is a walking with you kind of podcast. So, I think the most important thing to know is I'm a human being on planet Earth, and I'm the third rock from this little tiny sun. And we are in the Milky Way galaxy. And that place is like smallest type of galaxy humans even really look at is the Milky Way. When the Hubble telescope was first launched, I remember I cried. We were finally going to be able to see the stars in a way we'd never seen. And then it needed contacts. Remember, they had to send up a second shuttle because the telescope didn't work. And they sent up a man who was a neurosurgeon. This was a man who had studied medicine and became an astronaut because he was the only one that had the calmness and peace of mind to be able to take huge gloves. I mean, gloves that are clunky, people, and use surgical grade instruments to install small optical lenses into mankind's most expensive telescope. And he did it. And to this day, we still admire the pictures. Now we've had a new telescope go up, and it's even better, and it's even bigger, and it's even more wonderful. But I will always honor the neurosurgeon that helped us see the stars. And that's who I am. I'm an analytical biochemist. I used to make drugs for a living, legal ones. And no, there's no Breaking Bad in my basement, but I love the stars. So I deal in the microscopic and the practical and make sure that you see clearly, but I never lose sight of what truly brings us inspiration. And that's the awe that is this galaxy.
Oh, that's so beautiful. I've never, ever had anyone introduce themselves the way you so eloquently did, or bring so much awe into something. I mean, I never knew that. Mm-hmm. It's not something you're really taught unless you really dig into things. So that was just awesome. I feel like I don't know what to say at this point. After you talk, I'm like, do I say anything? I don't know that I can bring any kind of value to that conversation. I failed every science in school. I barely passed biology, and I failed chemistry hard. I was like, no, not for math and science, not my cup of tea. No. So when I hear people talk and there's so much passion behind it, it's very intriguing to me because it makes it fun to hear their perspective. But what I'd like to do is have you share a bit of your story. That we all have a story of what we've had to overcome in order to be where we are. So when we look at Janine and we see 12 books, 91 online courses, years of broadcasting. I don't even remember how many shows. I don't remember how many shows you have done and produced, all the things over the years. But there's story behind that. You know, being a mom and running business and having these deep passions. I think it's important for people to remember that the destination is not what we should be shooting for. It's enjoying the journey along the way and learning from what our experiences are, so we can grow and keep becoming who we're meant to become in this world. So I would love it to just give you the floor and let you share your story of overcoming some of the things that you've had to overcome, how you've overcome them to get to where you are today.
I think the best way to describe that is I don't take breathing for granted. I was an asthmatic because both of my parents were children of the 50s. And so they both smoked. And my sister and I were both allergic to smoking. But they smoked in the house, and they smoked unfiltered cigarettes because that's what you did. Okay. Mm-hmm. So no judgment to them on that. Because I think if they actually knew the harm that they were causing, it would have devastated them, because they were good parents. I mean, they were loving and kind. They just didn't know. And so I always had these asthma attacks, and they didn't go away until I went to college. And that's when I went, who knew? Because we were ignorant, because, you know, we don't need to go into the history of the cigarette industry, but we all know there was a lot of propaganda about how wonderful it was. So how could I be allergic to something as cigarette smoke or secondhand smoke? That wasn't what, right. You know, that wasn't even a thing. So I don't take breathing for granted, because I spent a lifetime learning how to breathe in a very toxic environment. And so I think the best thing I can share is that no matter what environment you're in, you can make choices on whether or not you suffer. Now, we're going to kind of go a little bit Buddhist here, but I was raised in Japan, and I had a Shaolin temple that was near our home. And my father was in the Navy and my mother was a nurse. And so most of my upbringing was outside of the United States. And so that Shaolin temple taught me how to meditate, but it was just like Kung Fu Panda was, even though that was set in China. Kung Fu Panda and I have something very much in common. That is, we both love those honey almond cookies that those monks hide. I remember the first time I saw Kung Fu Panda and I told my kids, oh, that's exactly why I held so still in meditation, was because I wanted one of those cookies. So that's a delightful way that I learned to meditate. And it was very helpful to me because by calming myself down, I learned how to open up my eustachian tubes, even though, I was told there was nothing wrong with me. I was probably allergic to something in my environment, but basically the only medicine that was available to us at that time was, I just lost the name of it. It tastes like grape flavored stuff. Dimetapp. That was the only thing we had. Right. It made you very sleepy. And so I didn't like taking that. So I learned to meditate so that I could physically, and that's when I learned I had a lot of control of my body. I didn't realize I had so much control over my body because, you were told back in that time, you didn't have a lot of control over your body. You just had to deal with it. You're a human being on planet Earth. Deal with it. Right. And so then the other one was, in high school, I read this really amazing book by Frank Herbert called Dune. And I learned about the Bene Gesserits and how they could control the muscles of their body. And I think I used the mantra that they had for fear and how fear was the mind killer. I don't know how many times, but I never got to meet Frank Herbert. But if I had ever met him, I would have thanked him for that because he kept me alive, because I would calm my heart rate down and I would meditate anytime I started having asthma attacks, because the only thing they had were inhalers that would wire me up so badly that I couldn't sit still and I was strung out, or Dimetapp. These were my options.
Strung out or wiped out, you're, in a coma.
Correct. So
right? Like, it's
there you go.
awful.
So to me, I do not take breathing for granted.
That's such an amazing story. I did not know that you spent most of that time growing up in Japan. That is something we have in common. My dad was also Navy. But that was before I was around. So
I was about ready to say Eastern Theater or Western, because that was how they split it up, right?
Yeah. He was here. He was off the out of California. In the Navy, and he was on a battleship. He was in Vietnam, all that kind of stuff. But that was all before I was born. So we never did the, traveling to bases or anything like that. So I've never had that experience, but I hear stories so much. And so that's one thing we have in common. I love that you shared, and I think this is where it maybe makes us think a little bit. You say you don't take breathing for granted. And I think about all the things, when you said that, all the things we take for granted. Our vision. My grandmother had macular degeneration. She lost her frontal vision. And while she was driving, it just finally went, right? No more, can't see. Wow, you realize what a gift it is. When you lose your voice, you realize, it's so great to be able to speak and communicate to people. Or with COVID, a lot of us lost our taste and smell. It comes and goes. It's on a wave now every 3 months, like clockwork. It gets really bad and then it gets somewhat better. It's never come back in full swing. And so I think about all the things we take for granted. And as we are working on building our businesses, as we are entrepreneurs, we are parents, we are spouses, we're living our life where, like you said, you grew up in the Buddhist faith, and, all the things all the rituals, or I shouldn't say ritual, is probably a bad word to use, but like all the things that we do in our faith with the prayer and the meditation and all of the things that we devote our time to, how much of it we actually take for granted until something happens. And all of a sudden, it seems like we now realize how important that thing was for us. And as you were talking about taking for granted, you don't take for granted breathing. I think about what you do. If you weren't, if you had not been able to work through and overcome the breathing, to be able to do all the courses and to speak the way you do and run the podcast and do the broadcast on the radio, all of those things, none of those things would have been an option. Or they would have been extremely difficult. And you still probably would have been able to do them, but maybe it would have been different.
And the same can be said of Michael Phelps. He has a similar issue. Here we know this man as an incredible gold medal winner, multiple times over in swimming. And he can only breathe 30% of what most normal people can breathe. And yet he overcame that too. So I bring up Michael Phelps because when I heard about his breathing issue, I'm like, yeah, when you have issues with breathing, which I don't anymore, but when you struggle with that at some point, you get to a point where you had to look death in the face multiple times. I know Michael Phelps has. He doesn't talk about it, but I'd love to have a little conversation with him and say, so how many times have you stared death in the face? And he would look at me, because anybody who's had any kind of breathing issues, there are those nights where you would wake up and you are unable to breathe. And so you just don't take it for granted. And so that's one of those things where when you've had to stare death in the face, you can make it a friend or you can make it an enemy. In my case, I made it a friend. I was like, okay, well, if it's my time to go, then at least I want to see what's on the other side. And so I had several experiences that were very mystical, metaphysical, whatever you want to call it. And they weren't near-death experiences like some people talk about NDEs. Mine were, I was struggling to breathe, and in order to distract myself, death would take me on trips. And when I would come back, I'd be wheezing and all that, but I would be breathing again. So I know there were many times where I probably had moments where the body was inert, but it was because I also knew that I wasn't done living yet. And so there are so many people on this planet that have had similar issues like I have. I know I am not a rarity. I know there are a lot of them. And I just wanted to let those wonderful people know that I understand what you've been through. And I understand why you have a passion in your belly. And I understand why people look at you and they accuse you of really crazy things. Like they say that you're a high functioning ADHD, or they say you're high functioning autistic, or they say you're high functioning.
High functioning is that word, right?
High functioning, meaning, would you slow down and stop moving because you're making me tired just thinking about all the things that you do. And I wanted to let you know, I understand what drives you. And that is, life is precious.
Yeah.
Life is to be cherished, but we don't relax the way other people relax. It's kind of like the Matrix, where the old man says, I have a hard time sleeping. I figure I was asleep the first 18 years of my life. I'm done sleeping. Same thing.
I really like that. Our son had asthma. Our youngest son had asthma growing up, and it was devastating. And I felt so helpless watching him go through these bouts of coughing to the point that he would throw up because he couldn't breathe. And, you know, we did everything. We did all the things all the time. But it really changed so much for his world. And I didn't get asthma until I moved to Colorado, and I just never adapted. Apparently, I get what they call activity-induced asthma, where my lungs just like, nope, we're done. We're not doing this. It's not happening. And so I can relate watching someone go through that versus going through it myself, to the point of feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't breathe. I don't know what to do. I've done everything. And I think there's so many things in life that happen in our environments based on the choices that we make that make us think, I'm done. I don't have anything left in me. And so I know you have so much wisdom to share, and I would really like, because you mentioned it earlier, like we have a choice about our environment, right? We get to choose whether or not it fuels us or stops us. I am one of those people that when I come up against resistance, it is not something that fuels me at all. If it debilitates me and shuts me down instantly. But I'm a very entrepreneurial spirit. I am full of love and optimism and passion. And so what's happening to me when this feeling comes over me that I can't do anymore, and I feel debilitated and I hit this brick wall, I don't get when a lot of people say, oh, when people say I can't do it, or when I come up against opposition, it just pushes me harder. It doesn't do that to me. It shuts me down. And I have to mentally climb through all of this to find an ounce of action for myself, as where other people are like, okay, I'm going full speed ahead. And I'm like, where is this all coming from? And you talk about all of this, and I would love for your perspective to share, like, how do you, when you're coming up against all these environmental things that can stop us in our tracks, what are some tools or skill sets or coping mechanisms, or whatever you want to call them, that you've done in the past or that you currently use that help you keep moving forward when you get to those moments where you're like, this, here's a stuck point, here's a brick wall, here's a big massive boulder, and I don't see a way around it?
To harken back to the point of where I was talking about your environment, you choose whether or not you want to suffer, is what I mean. The Buddhist mindset is you choose whether or not you're going to suffer, and if you're going to make everybody else around you suffer because you're in a toxic environment or not. And so I like to use airports as an example because I travel quite a bit. And when they cancel a flight, I love looking at the different people and how they handle it. You have the ones that immediately get on the phone and start complaining up one side and down the other. And then you have the other people that were like, oh, good, I wanted to get to know you better anyway. And they take off and go grab a coffee and get to know each other better, and they take advantage of it. But when it comes up to a lot of resistance, please realize, thank goodness for those competitive personalities. Competitive personalities go up against a boulder, go up against that brick wall and go, I will scale you. They're the ones that make it to the top of Everest. They're the ones that achieve what others can't, and they're saluted, and they are honored, and they are rewarded for their hard work. But you and I made a choice. We were done with working hard. Remember, just because we were trained that way doesn't mean. So we were done. So our personality type and our life journey is to make sure that as we move through that life, that we don't allow ourselves to suffer needlessly, right? And the way you suffer needlessly is by trying to control that which cannot be controlled, which means everyone on planet. Like, that's 8 billion others that are floating around a planet, and that's just the humans, right?
That's just humans.
That's just the humans. This planet is crawling with life, right? So how much control do you think you have of all that? You don't. So I highly recommend for those that when you meet up with resistance, go take a nap, go meditate, go take a walk, get away. Because if you're meeting resistance, it means you're going down a path that's going to require work, hard work. Now, it's not the same as if you're trying to learn a musical instrument. There, it's not hard work. It's you're training yourself to do something you've never done before. So you realize you need practice. Practice is not work, right? Practice is, I want to improve. I want to grow. I care to expand. I want my skill sets to be more. So that is not work. That's expansion. That's growth. But if you meet serious resistance and you have made a decision that you have decided, I am not a competitive personality, I would like to go with the flow of life, then that means there's only one thing in this world you have control over. That is you, your thoughts, and your emotions. So congratulations. You've taken 8 billion humans and all that they control, and you have released the need to control that. And now you're down to 3 items. You can control your behavior, your thoughts, or your emotions.
See, and now we have a pause because Dean is taking notes.
And Janine's a college professor. She used to teach math and physics, and she knows when to pause to let the students catch up with their thoughts, because you're thinking faster than I'm speaking. And I always know that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I think about when you mentioned the airports, I can totally relate to that. I went out to go to my son's basic training graduation, and we were flying out. We were all done. I didn't know anybody there, and our flights all get canceled. Really teeny tiny airport that actually closes at night. I don't understand that. We're in Colorado, so we have DIA. It doesn't ever close. So I didn't understand the airport closes. I can't grasp that. But they said, we can get you a connecting flight in the morning. I'm like, but the connecting flight is after my flight in the next state over. So somehow I have to get there. Me and 4 strangers were talking, and one girl says, well, I've got a car in the parking lot. We can drive to my mom's, get the bigger vehicle, and we can all drive up there to catch our connecting flight.
I love it.
Mind you, I'm not an adventurous person. I don't do things like this.
But you did something like that.
I did something like that. I was like, let's go. Let's go. So we're in this car, and we end up in this neighborhood that's really fancy, really big houses. And we're like, we were making jokes, but we were kind of a little serious. Like, is she taking us to our demise? We have no idea what we got ourselves into. We pull up, you drive down this long driveway to get to the house so no one can hear you scream, kind of thing. Like, we were kind of panicking a little bit. But I mean, obviously I'm here, everything's fine. But it was just one of those things that, we never know what the outcome is going to be. And if we aren't ever willing to step outside of our comfort zone to do something to get us to the next place, to get us to the next step, to keep growing, we won't ever. And we will just as easily die sitting where we were as we would if we got in the car and left, right? We have no idea what's going to happen. And it's not to say people should be reckless with their choices and being adventurous or anything like that. It's just to say that I was that person where normally I would just, okay, I'll get a hotel room, I'll sit here and wait, and I'll figure it out, let it all get figured out for me. I was never that person that would find a way to make it where I had to go. And that one night I did. And we had such an amazing time, 5 strangers in a vehicle all night, driving to get to where we needed to get to the next airport so we could catch all of our flights out. And it was an experience that I wouldn't trade for anything, but speaks to choosing your environment and choosing what you do and don't allow to happen to you, because you get to choose the actions you take beyond that. And I think it gave me a really good, different perspective on my encouragement to others to choose so others aren't choosing for you. It was a great way to explain that. It just made me think of that.
Mm-hmm. And what I encourage people to understand is you make good choices. I don't know who told you don't make good choices, but you make good choices. The challenge can be when you start calibrating yourself to bad choices you made in the past, to which I say, but you wouldn't make that same choice today, would you? And they go, oh, no, never. I'm like, therefore, you have made good choices. You have improved. You've gotten better. You're not that person that was 22 years old and decided to stick around the party, even though you saw somebody breaking out the drugs or, whatever. Nowadays, that that's a path of pain you don't want to go down. So ergo, you see somebody breaking out dollar bills and start rolling them up. You're like, I'm out. When you see the razor blades in the mirror start coming out. So you're like, okay, we're done. You walk out of those situations. And so most people don't have to get to that extreme. All right. So I highly recommend to a lot of my students, I say, start writing down, I make good choices. I trust myself to make good choices. I live a life according to my design. I love the fact of how I feel right now. Right now, I feel content. Right now, I feel like I'm in control. And so you just have this conversation with yourself and you just state facts, and it's not emotional. You're not trying to do anything. You're just trying to bring yourself to what they call your center. You're coming to your center. You're coming to who and what you really are. And so that's one of my favorite things to do. First thing in the morning, after my feet hit the floor and I make the pot of coffee, is I'm sitting there with my notebook writing out. And I have a list of over 23 things that I write out. That's very, very blasé to most people. And that is, I trust myself to make good decisions. I love the way I feel right now. I love that feeling of right place, right time. I love how my life looks. I find my life to be delicious. I love this delicious knowing. I love the fact that I'm breathing. It's so stupid. And I know that a lot of people are already into this habit with the gratitude journal. But to me, the gratitude journal never really set well. It didn't work for me because I am so grateful for everything beyond breathing. Breathing's my baseline.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for everything over that. And so it didn't work well for me. So I ended up coming up with the thing that is the exercise I just shared with you. And that is, it's very easy to lose confidence, like you said, when you're up against a lot of stuff. But please realize, what is the joke? The only one who's 100% confident are the psychopaths or sociopaths or something like that. I'm going to bungle that joke, but it's like the only people on the planet who are 100% confident are those we really don't want running around. Okay. Because we end up incarcerating them because they don't behave well. So the fact
that freaks me out. I've never heard that.
Oh,
wow. Okay. No, go ahead. Continue. I just
just a little bit of human psychology, dear.
Wow.
If you think about it.
That is scary, though.
The people that are 100% confident and truly believe are the ones that end up doing some pretty horrific things according to the rest of society. And so just realize that if you're struggling with confidence, I think you're growing, you're expanding, and you're being a contributing member to the human race. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that. I think that it gives us something to think about, where you said, when you're saying all the things that you love every day, it's about fact. It's not a fake it till you make it. It's not all these things that we are told we need to tell ourselves to pump ourselves up, because I don't like that. I do affirmations. I do speak life into myself. And I like what you said. I think that's something I'm going to add into what I already do, because I tend to discount the things that I really love about my life, and I take them for granted because I never talk about them. I never share them, not even with myself. And I think that's something that is a great thing to add into whatever our daily things are for getting started with our day, is what we love. It's amazing. I love it.
Human beings are so much more powerful than we ever give ourselves credit for. And so realize a lot of this self-help stuff that started in the 70s was in an effort to keep the momentum going from what the 60s taught us, which was we needed to be in control of our own lives. We needed that ability to be in that state of freedom. And so I'm very grateful for the 60s people who, they didn't know what the freedom looked like. They didn't know how it should express itself. So what did they do? They refused to take baths. They refused to cut their hair. They were just rebelling at everything. And then in the 70s, you had the me generation. It was all about individualistic mindsets. But then it kind of started to open up the way for self-awareness. And now that we are where we are now, what is fascinating to me is the fact that so many people are like, really? You're going to go to war now? Well, we all know this does not help anybody except the, military industrial complex. So how are we going to move forward as humanity? And now that our economy is so globalized, what happens to somebody in Taiwan, I can find out within 2 minutes. All I have to have is an internet connection. So I have friends now all over the world, like many other people after 2020. And when you start talking about war, you're like, wait a minute, my friend Joey's over there, right? Oh, and by the way, Joey doesn't look anything like me, and we both have 2 different types of jobs. But guess what? We're collaborating right now, and you're screwing this up. It's a very different world we live in, and I love it. I wouldn't have it any other way.
World. That is true. It's a very different world. And I think it's almost feels on a daily basis, it's ever changing so fast anymore than it used to. So Janine, thank you so much for being here and sharing your wisdom and your insight and your greatness with us today. I really appreciate your time.
It's always a delight to be invited to be able to speak. And so I am honored to have this sacred space. Thank you very much for your time.
That was so amazing. And I just realized, so I'll have to cut this into the podcast part. I just was so in awe listening to you. So Janine has shared a link below for those of you that want to get connected with her and learn more about her. You can join her open Friday coffee, which I have had the pleasure to attend. And it's a great space. Come in, get to know her, learn her community. Her website's below. How you can connect with her is there. And if at any point you felt and believe, like I did, that Janine had so much greatness to share this out with those in your world so you all can share her greatness together. And thank you so much for listening. There we go. Now I can finish up though. I'm like, I always forget to do the ending because I get so intrigued with everything going on.
Before you go, because I know we're close on time, but I'll read you. This is for you. I'll read this for you, okay? Because you want to do something new and different. And so I'll record it for you. I trust myself to make good decisions. I will always be abundant. I'm living my best life. I am thankful for how I feel right now. I'm making good decisions. I'm thankful for who I am right now. I'm thankful for who I be. I'm thankful for my point of attraction. I'm thankful I know this stuff. I'm thankful for my inner being that is aware of me. I feel happy and I enjoy what I do. This is such a delicious life I am living. I really like this delicious knowing. I'm excited by what's going to unfold. I'm excited by the possibilities and the potentials. I love the feeling of receiving and being in alignment. I adore the trust people have in me. I love the feeling of right place, right time. I'm thankful for the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical health I have. I'm thankful for my thriving life. Attract, attract, attract. So you attract what you want and what you're thankful for. Yeah.
Yes, we do. Yes,
so
we do.
I just wanted to give you that since you wanted to. Not all of those statements will be appropriate for you or your life. It won't be in harmony with where you're going. And that's not the point. The point is that's my stuff. But if any of those sentences can inspire you to create your own, I would love for you to be able to, at one point, share that back with me someday and say, hey, these are mine.
Thank you so much for being willing to share that with me. That really means a lot to me.
Yeah. Well, you're willing to improve. Are you kidding? Of course. I'll be glad to share that with you.
Every day, every second. Like, what did I do wrong? And how do I do better? And, all the things. It's a craziness. I think it's an addiction.
So one last little bit, and that is you can't get it wrong. Did you know that? Has anyone ever told you that?
Mm-mm.
You can't get it wrong. You can't get it wrong because you're breathing. As long as you're breathing, you're fine. And then when you're not breathing, you're done. So you can't get it wrong. That whole right, wrong thing, that's the ego. Yeah. So I just wanted to share that with you. Anyway, dear one, you take care of yourself and thank you. And we will chat again very soon, I'm sure.
Yes. Take care. Thank you. Bye.